computer. Okay.
We're vibing.
So, welcome to I Want to Fight Araki, a JoJo close analysis podcast, because we like challenges.
And we want
I'm
to fight
Thomas.
him. I'm Emily.
And so basically, I thought it would just be nice to just sort of start like with our general how we got into JoJo, and then we're going to talk about the OP, and then of Phantom Blood, because we're talking about the first 3 episodes of Phantom Blood today, and then get into some analysis of the regular episode.
So Thomas, how did you get into JoJo? Was it entirely my fault?
Yes, it was your fault. I still have the nightmares. Yeah, Emily is probably one of the biggest anime fans I know, just in general, not just JoJo stuff.
Just calling me out here. This whole podcast is just going to be Thomas calling me out.
And so you were watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood when we first started college together, and we ended up like talking anime a little bit after that, and then you mentioned that you really like JoJo, and I was like,
was that how it went?
Roughly, as I recall. And so I was like, all right, like most people on the internet know what JoJo is. I think it's sort of infamous. And I was like, you know what? They just added part 3 onto Netflix. Let me give this a watch. And I'm going to be honest with you,
there.
These Phantom Blood episodes probably we won't be too excited. We'll try, but it didn't really capture me. And then I started part 2, Battle Tendency, and I fell in love. That is still one of my favorite parts of JoJo. I don't want to get too far into it, but we'll save that for the Battle Tendency discussion. But yeah, that's my exposure to the franchise. I've only been a fan for a couple months now. What about you, Emily?
Well, first, I'd like to clarify. I feel like it's very important to say that neither of us have read the manga.
Yeah, we're only covering the anime. So this is
strictly for the anime. And I would read the manga if I had the money to get the manga. And I refuse piracy at this point because I am a college student who wants to be a writer. So I have become quite,
it's the guilt. It's writer's guilt.
It's writer's guilt. We're gonna coin that term. So I got into this curse in a very interesting way through somebody that I actually really don't like. Somebody who I like
shall literally not be named.
It's literally he who shall not be named. I just don't. It's like somebody who I had like literally a toxic friendship with. It was kind of dark, but like. And that's like I started watching it like a year ago, and he liked it, and I was like, we were like kind of friends, and he was like, you should watch it, and I was like, okay. And then I like got through up until like the beginning of Stardust Crusaders, and like for the sole reason of me not wanting to talk about it with him anymore, I stopped watching it. And then like literally 2 months ago, I was like, wait a minute, I liked that show. Let's watch the whole thing again. Then I just watched the entire thing all the way through over again. And now I'm watching the entire thing all the way through over again at a much slower pace in order to critically analyze it for a podcast. So now this is where I am.
This is my life now.
Not to mention the whole merch story.
Yes, yeah.
In which I got one piece of JoJo merch like maybe a week ago, and then I was like kept seeing ads for like more of it because that's just how advertisement works. It's like, oh, you got this, now you want more of it. And I was like, stop it with your devilish temptations. Don't do this to me. And then like right after I got the first piece, I was like, I texted Thomas and I was like, fam, I have a problem. And then I got another one.
And then you did it again.
And then I just did it again. So now I'm here.
All right. So I think now you guys have some feelings about where we're at with the series. Why don't we talk about the opening of Phantom Blood, which is not in the first episode, which is sort of JoJo traditions. They don't do the OPs in the first episodes, but yeah, why don't we talk about it?
I like the opening. Yes, I don't have a lot to say about the first opening, except that it is all the openings in the show, or like throughout the entire show, they're just consistently like really good.
all the openings in the show are really good. I think this one is actually definitely up there for me. It's definitely
Same.
top five. Pretty much the only thing so like the OP, it takes place all in the Joestar Mansion, right? And it actually opens with a bunch of the manga panels of all the JoJos that will come after Jonathan. And I think setting all the action of the OP within the house is kind of clever because it's like, I mean, it just sort of reinforces this idea that Dio and Jonathan are always going to be tied together. Or I guess Dio and the Joestars, not necessarily Dio and Jonathan, although I guess in a literal sense they're tied together. Not so much in a
yeah.
destiny sense. But yeah, I think that's pretty clever. I think also just the camera work, like, because it's essentially like a one shot that they just kind of are swooping the camera around the whole mansion as shit goes down. Also, something I noticed, which we'll probably talk about again when we get to Stardust Crusaders, but the last bit of this OP where Jonathan and Dio are fighting is very reminiscent of the first Stardust Crusaders OP, where there's a shot of Jotaro he's in like some tower with star platinum, and all of the tarot cards representing the stands are going up, and then he's fighting like I forget who he's fighting, but it's just shot in a very similar way, which sort of references the fact that Dio is the main villain of Stardust Crusaders. Again,
I didn't
I
notice
guess
that.
that's just what I thought of.
That's kind of cool though.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. I think the OP is like mostly foreshadowing, and I think we can just get into summary because
actually,
talked about.
I have one thing about the opening.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have two things about the opening. The first one being that it comes in, the first time it comes in is in the second episode, and I was like watching it, and at the very, like right before the opening queued up in the second episode, it was just this big introduction where it was something along the lines of like, oh, Jack the Ripper is now terrorizing the streets of London because for some reason Jack the Ripper is in this show. Who knows why? He's just here vibing. And it's like
he's literally only in one episode.
Yeah. And then right after that, it was just like, but even like the horrors that, he, did onto the world were nothing compared to the horrors that these two would release onto the world through their feud. And then it cuts to the opening. And the first thing you get in the opening is like that string of like just that flash of all of the JoJos at once, pretty much. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty clever.
Not to mention like just the animation and all the openings, and in the first one as well, it's good, and it's like very like it takes a lot of the manga panels into it. It's literally just looks like someone animated like parts from a manga. They just really did a lot of that kind of stuff with it. I just love the animation and all the openings.
Yeah, the animation is super sexy.
The animation in the show is amazing.
Yeah, in general, the animation in this show, as I'm sure we'll say many, many times, is pretty beautiful. It's also interesting that like it's in the animation is 3D, but like I feel like most of the time like 3D animation doesn't really hold up that well, but I feel like the opening animation holds up really well. I mean, it's still super fluid.
Yeah. It's just as an art kid, I'm going to be constantly just nutting every once in a while over how good the animation is. I'm just like, wow, that was so smooth. It's so pretty and smooth, and it's good.
This show is like a combination of like very pretty and like horribly violent.
It's like you get those scenes where like AC/DC is just using his very, very disgusting powers, and it's God. Like, but it's animated so beautifully, and I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this.
That episode of this show is just going to be like, oh my God, it's so gross. Why does AC/DC have blood veins shooting out of his fingernail?
Ugh.
Anyway, now that we've grossed everyone out.
I swear to God, there's like several people that I'm trying to get to watch JoJo who haven't gotten to that episode yet. And I literally just like told everybody in my Instagram story today, if there's any time that you should start watching it, it's right now because we're making a podcast.
Yes.
And they're going to listen to it if they just start to watch it. And they're just going to hear that part about the blood fingernails and they're going to be like, wait a minute.
I don't know if I want to watch this show anymore.
Yeah.
All right, let's swing into the summary of the first 3 episodes. So, in 1868, wealthy noble George Joestar is involved in a carriage accident, killing his wife. A looter named Dario Brando begins to raid the wreckage, but George and his son are still alive. Believing Dario to be a good Samaritan, George promises to pay back his debt to Dario. 12 years later, George's son, Jonathan, nicknamed JoJo, has grown into a youth with a strong sense of justice, saving a girl named Arina from some bullies. Meanwhile, Dario has fallen in, but has had a son named Dio. On Dario's deathbed, he hands Dio a letter of introduction to the Joestars, and Dio begins plotting to take the Joestars' fortune in order to prove himself superior to Dario. Dio begins tormenting JoJo once he arrives at the Joestars' home, including kicking his dog, beating him in a boxing match, and shedding light on JoJo's lack of smarts and manners. This culminates in Dio sexually assaulting Arina, whom JoJo had gotten close to. JoJo fights Dio and nearly wins before George interrupts the two, but not before Dio's blood flecks a stone mask that belonged to JoJo's mother. The mask releases several spikes that would be fatal to anyone wearing it. 6 years later, the two brothers have seemingly set aside their differences and have exceeded both academically and in the world of college rugby. However, George has fallen gravely ill. One night, while JoJo is working on his thesis about the stone mask, he discovers the letter Dario sent to George and is able to intuit that Dio not only poisoned his own father, but is also poisoning George. JoJo confronts Dio, but lacking any proof, he heads to London to search for an antidote as well as where Dio found the poison. JoJo is confronted by a street gang in London led by Robert E.O. Speedwagon.
The best boy.
Bob Speedwagon.
Bob Speedwagon. Robert.
Before this recording. JoJo defeats the gang, but Speedwagon is so moved by JoJo's honor and restraint that he agrees to help guide JoJo on his quest. Meanwhile, Dio decides to test out his perfect method for killing JoJo, activating the stone mask. After testing out the mask on some street thugs, Dio discovers that the mask doesn't actually kill the wearer, but rather turns them into a vampire. When Dio returns to the Joestar mansion, JoJo is waiting for him and confronts and exposes Dio with the help of Speedwagon. George has Dio arrested, but before he can be cuffed, Dio stabs George, activating the mask and turning himself into a vampire. JoJo and Speedwagon begin to fight Dio, and in the chaos, the mansion lights on fire and Speedwagon is thrown from the building. JoJo decides that he will kill Dio no matter the cost and is able to impale Dio on the statue of the guardian angel of the Joestars. Speedwagon is able to rescue JoJo from the burning building just as it begins to collapse. In the aftermath, we see the apothecary Dio bought the poison from searching the ruins before Dio's hand reaches out and begins absorbing his blood. End of episodes.
Spicy.
Yeah. There's a lot that happens in these first 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's like basically the way that we're going to go about this is now that you have the summary, we're going to go through the entire thing yet again, but at a very, very slow pace. And I have 3 pages of notes as a treat because I'm insane. And I gotta say...
Well, we want to be thorough.
Yes, I gotta say, in all honesty, I'm actually... right after these first 3 episodes, I enjoy the first 3 episodes of Phantom Blood a lot, actually, but the rest of it is sort of like makes me sad because I feel like the exposition in Phantom Blood is actually one of the strongest, especially like when you compare it. Like, I think the least strong exposition is probably in Stardust Crusaders. Like, just the way that they introduce everything, it makes me kind of sad because it's just like not nearly as well done as it could be. But the exposition in part 1, I gotta say, tickles my fancy quite a lot. It's very good.
Yeah.
I have many reasons why.
Basically, my main complaint with Phantom Blood, and we're probably going to get into this in the next 2 episodes of this podcast, is that I just feel like everything is too short. Like, I feel like... So, like, we're not really at the pinnacle of it yet, but the whole relationship between Speedwagon and JoJo, I do not feel like is really earned necessarily. Like, I don't get why Speedwagon is this amazing friend of JoJo's. That I mean, Speedwagon shows up in some way, shape, or form in every part of JoJo. Um, and I don't
Which I
know.
must
I
admit
just
I
feel like
love.
that could have had more build up. But
It
yeah,
really
Phantom
could
Blood
have.
definitely does have some good things about it. So, what's the first thing you want to talk about, Emily?
I mean, I just want to go off your point with Speedwagon, Robert, or Bob Speedwagon, as we call him. I'm just going to call him Robert. So, our boy Robert here, everyone in the fandom loves him so much. He deserves it, but like it really wasn't built up very well. And I just thought it's like one of the funniest things about the show, I actually think, is how literally like he just sort of fights him in an alley and then kicks him in the face. And then
Yeah.
suddenly our boy Robert is just like, wait a minute, are you a true gentleman? And then suddenly he just like, for some reason, after getting kicked in the face, he just like completely falls in love with Jonathan. I'm completely convinced.
Also, a
Boy Robert is
tradition
just,
that will extend to every part of JoJo is your best friend character has to be beat up in order for him to become best friends with the JoJo of that part.
it's like, yeah, definitely. It's also like, I remember like, I was going to go to a concert with a friend. This has to do with it. So this has everything to do with this, surprisingly. And I kept saying, you probably heard this, Thomas, where I just kept saying, I want the lead singer of this band to kick me in the face. I feel like that's the similar thing with like our boy Robert and Jonathan. Is that Speedwagon just literally is just like, I want him to kick me in the face. I will say thank you. He just like, for some reason, after that face kick, he was like, wait a minute. And then he just sort of follows him home. That's the best part. Like,
Yeah.
he literally just appears in his house and they don't even have like any discussion after that. He just sort of follows him everywhere. He doesn't even do anything. He literally is just there to like
And
yell everything that's going on.
like we know like Speedwagon can fight. Like he
He's
has
got the hat
some
blades.
yeah, he's got the odd job hat from James Bond. But yeah, he just kind of doesn't. I do think so. Like the one thing I was sort of focusing on when I was rewatching these episodes is, I think like class is kind of an interesting theme that is sort of explored here because we have like Dio and Speedwagon are sort of opposites in the same way, or they always emphasize this point that like JoJo and Dio are like two sides of the same coin. Um, but I almost feel like it's more accurate to say that with Speedwagon because so like Speedwagon is both Dio and Speedwagon, are similar character design wise because they both have blonde hair, they dress in suits and stuff, and then they both come from like poor lifestyles. They really had to like fight to get everything that they earned as kids. Um, but I think the difference, and I think that creates like an interesting contrast because like Dio is sort of this. I mean, there is nothing redeemable about Dio. He's just evil. I mean, the series starts with what will become. Or I guess it doesn't start with, but the second episode features a strong running theme of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: dog murder. Um,
You know that website Does the Dog Die?
yes,
I can only imagine someone looking up JoJo on that website and then it literally just says in all caps, if you have to check this website before you watch a movie, please do not watch this show.
exactly. Or just for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it just says yes in all caps and like
Yes.
50 million exclamation marks. Um, yeah, so, but Speedwagon is really sort of characterized. I mean, he's like very honorable, is like literally he devotes his whole life essentially to stopping Dio because JoJo was nice to him. And it sort of makes me wonder like what this show is saying about like class.
It do be interesting. I ended up I ended up thinking a lot about like the whole class thing, but for like a different reason. It had nothing to do with our boy Robert here. I'm only gonna call him Robert. I feel like I just like that name better for him.
Even
Not
in Battle
really.
Tendency.
It's just, I feel like I just think the name Robert is just so silly for some reason. I don't know
We
why.
apologize to anyone listening named Robert.
Yeah. If your name Robert, you're very special, because that means you have the same name as Robert E.O. Speedwagon, which makes you a person who is simply just above everything. You are now a god amongst us. Anyways, I was thinking of class a lot, but not having to do with our boy Robert. More just with Jonathan and Dio, and that's like literally most of my first page of notes. It's just the first 5 minutes. Can I just go on a rant for about the first 5 minutes of the first episode?
Go for it.
Because I feel like that's when, like, I feel like Dio and Jonathan, they both do have like some sort of like interesting character development, or like things that have been shown about their characters, but all of them only happen in the first 5 minutes of the first episode. It's just like, I feel like something that makes me say that I want to fight Araki. That's how we came up with the title for the show, because every time Araki misses an opportunity with a character, I want to beat the hell out of him. Be like, sir.
There's going to be a lot of that when we get to Diamond is Unbreakable, by the way.
Yes. And it's like, the main reason I want to beat up Araki for Phantom Blood is because Dio actually could have been like a really interesting villain, and he was interesting for these first 3 episodes, but then suddenly he was just like silly. Like, he just became kind of stupid. There was those moments like just in his voice acting where he just did that soft re. He just like screamed there. Like all the stupid things he said, just like, it's like suddenly he's not even like interesting. He just becomes like this like almost like comedically evil antagonist, especially in part 3. Like, I just can't take him seriously in part 3.
Yeah. I mean, he has like the complexity of like a Disney villain. Like, he is so one-dimensional.
And he could have, here's the thing, class will happen in a minute. I will talk about that in a hot minute. I know that's what I was going to call
Get your
originally.
notebooks ready, everyone.
Yeah, I have 3 pages of notes, and they're not in order. Well, they are in order, but they're not organized. So I'm just gonna rant about the first 5 minutes when it comes to class, and also mostly just Dio and Jonathan. So we got, the carriage accident happens, all that stuff. And it's interesting how literally in the first 5 minutes, I kept pausing it to write down stuff, like after literally every scene. Like, I had something to say about every scene here. So we have, it's definitely showing parallels in each scene in the first 5 minutes between Dio and Jonathan, how each one of them has like a very different life. And I feel like these first 5 minutes, they just slap. I just love them.
It's pretty good.
So when we're introduced to Jonathan, he actually was like somewhat interesting to me in like the first episode, because I was like, yes, he's like this rich boy. And except he's not like the perfect rich boy either. He has like, he's been yelled at by his dad for having bad table manners. He's just sort of like he's like not, I get the vibe that he's maybe not the smartest person. He's just sort of like a Forrest Gump type, where he's just kind of not very smart, but has a very good heart, and is also like a very large dude who can fight people.
Yes.
Like, he reminds me of Forrest Gump in that way, except, yeah.
I mean,
anyways.
I guess there are Nazis in this series.
There are Nazis in this
and
series.
Forrest Gump did, I think, no, wait, that was Vietnam, not Nazis.
Actually, I could compare the whole show. There's so many like other movies and shows that I could compare JoJo to, but I'm not even going to go down there right now, because that would take approximately 4.5 hours. So anyways, then we're introduced to Dio, a certain holy diver who has been gone much too long in the Midnight Sea. Oh, let's see what becomes of him. Thomas, I really hope that you get that reference.
No, that totally flew over my head.
I might have to kill you. I might have to kill you. So so Dio is literally like Dio Brando. His name is just a combination of Ronnie James Dio and Marlon Brando, which I find very funny, because I do actually listen to Ronnie James Dio. He is literally a 1980s like metal guy like he does heavy metal, and one of his songs is Holy Diver, to which the lyrics are, I only remember the first like 3 lines of the song. It's just, Holy Diver, you've been gone too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's becoming of me? And
You
I
can
feel
almost
like it was,
apply that to like the mask, maybe the stone mask.
yeah, I feel
It
like
kind of
it
goes
makes
like
it,
missing for a bit.
I gotta straight up say, it makes a lot of sense that if Dio really was named after Ronnie James Dio and Marlon Brando, I mean, Marlon Brando was kind of this like sexy actor dude who was like kind of an asshole apparently. So that kind of makes sense. And then you
Yes,
got Ronnie James Dio. He just like he does metal, which I feel I don't I just feel like that
he does
correlates
metal.
well.
He's just like snorting like metal shavings. Like
Yes. He does the good old heavy metal. I feel like Dio would probably like heavy metal. He's just angry. So the first way that like the first thing that is established about Dio, and like literally the first scene that he appears in, is his like drunken father throwing a bottle at him, and then he just like nonchalantly just dodges it and just does
yeah,
not change his facial expression whatsoever. It's just like, yes, I am used to this. This happens all the time, and I don't care anymore. Um, I'm talking so much, my voice is going all silly. And then it's also like established that he's like having to gamble in order to get food and just exist and like not die. So that's fun.
I think it's not just gambling. It's he's playing
Just
chess.
cheating and yeah. I feel like
Which
that just sort of implies other stuff as well.
yeah, definitely like is a reference to Dio's smarts and like just I mean how far ahead he is thinking in terms of his plan.
Yeah, it's like it's interesting how they're sort of once again 2 sides of the same coin. Jonathan is quickly established as a not too smart but very very nice guy, and Dio's established as the opposite, that a very bad dude who is very smart, at least for the first 3 episodes until he just becomes a comedic villain.
Yes,
Um, so
turning
it,
in people into cat people and
yeah. Another interesting thing I found about like is that in the first scene that he's in, he sort of like resists the urge to like fight back when he is wronged. And in the second one, where the after he beats a guy at chess and he slams his face into whatever the heck he was eating at the time, he also,
it's like
you could tell
bread
he's
or
getting,
something.
I don't know, it was like a plate of something. He just slammed his face into it. And he, once again, you could see him getting angry, but he, resists the urge to pummel him. So it's a very like common thing, I think, throughout the first episode, especially where it's established that he's kind of temperamental
Hmm.
and that he doesn't like that about himself. So that's like the one bit of like interesting, you know, I wouldn't call it character development, but one interesting character aspect, like the one interesting character aspect that could have been like very well elaborated on and could have become very interesting if it just, didn't, and it did not, which made me sad because that could have been very interesting.
Yeah, you're talking about this parallel scene in the first episode. One thing that I think is kind of interesting is um, you're sort of suggesting that Dio doesn't like that he's so emotional. I think what's interesting about Jonathan in when we see that parallel scene is that's the scene where he's fighting off the bullies who are messing with Arena, and he
I have a
sort of
lot to say
says
about that scene.
what?
I have a lot to say about that scene.
Yeah, he sort of says something to the effect of like so like once he loses the fight basically, but like the bullies go away anyway, and like Arena's like trying to help him up, and he says something like, "No, like I don't want your help. Like I just did it because like that's what's expected of me as like a noble or what." He doesn't say a noble, but he says like that's the expectation.
Does Jonathan is an asshole confirmed?
Does Jonathan is an asshole? A question we will be pondering probably throughout all of Phantom Blood.
I feel like
Um,
he's a good soft boy.
he is a good guy, but I think like the show almost like sets up the fact that like he's kind of chivalrous to a fault, which I
Yeah.
think is kind of interesting.
So back to that scene, TM. We have our legendary, the first like true meme that happens in the show happens there. You got Kono Dio da, but it was I, Dio, the first meme, and a very special meme at that.
Mhm.
Anyways, so this is the scene where my man here literally just sexually harasses Arena, and I have a lot to say about this scene. So basically, it's another scene where it's established that.
The thing we have to say is that Araki is really bad when writing women characters.
Which is true. It's very true. It gets like better throughout. Like it improves very slightly throughout, but it's just like, actually, I have something to say about Arena. So my theory is, so this is what I'm going to write my PhD thesis on. An 80-page paper on why Arena is actually the most badass character in JoJo. Because this dude over here comes over, kisses her, and says like just to steal away, like, I don't know what he was trying to steal away, but obviously like Jonathan had a thing with Arena and he was like, oh, you haven't kissed him yet, have you? And then he was just like, fine, I'll just ruin that for you right now. And then Arena falls into the mud and then she starts washing out her mouth with muddy water. And I was like, yo, that's badass though. So that's,
and like they even say like there's like a stream like nearby that she could have washed her mouth with, but she's like, it's just got to be like immediate where she washes her mouth.
And then she just like, she does that, which is once again, Arena, most badass character in JoJo. This is the first reason. There's actually several more reasons, but those don't really come in until like part 2, because she's an old woman and a very badass old woman at that. So anyways, he does that, and then she does that. And Dio's like very triggered at this. Like he is offended beyond belief. And he just sort of, it's like, how dare you? Like, how dare you say that, you know, my kiss is something to be like washed away with mud? And then she's like, just eat my ass, I don't care. And then, and then he gets so triggered that he just has to punch her, which is always fun.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because it's like, that's like really the only scene we see of Dio, maybe up until the final fight of Phantom Blood, where we see him where he's like, I don't have a plan to counter this.
He just sort of acts impulsively. And another instance of him, like just like one tiny minute of vulnerability where he's like, oh no, I lost my temper again, this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, ah. And he like makes a plot in his head. He was like, I have to like change this about me so I can actually like steal this family's wealth. And it's just like, my dude, you was Slytherin in the worst kind. he's like Draco Malfoy. He's like, except like the opposite,
right down to the blonde hair.
Because Draco Malfoy is rich, except like the only thing about Dio is that he's not rich, but he's still as snooty and kind of like a terrible person. Well, Draco Malfoy becomes like different later. I don't know a whole lot about Harry Potter, okay? I've seen like the first 5 movies. But he's just like, he's the reason why people stereotype Slytherins to be really bad people. And I have another thing to say that has to do with part 5. So Giorno is also a Slytherin. I'm just going to put that out there. We're not going to discuss why until part 5, but I just need to let everybody know that.
I mean, fair. I can understand that.
So let me consult my notes. Okay. Oh, they reference, I literally just saw this random thing here. It just said there was a reference to Little Lord Fauntleroy, at least, which is it might have been like a book. I think it was a book, but I know that there was a movie made of that book in like the 1930s and that I've seen that movie. It was like this old black and white movie about like this, it was a really weird plot. It was a nice movie. I enjoyed it. It was like, my grandma was like, hey, you want to watch this movie? I was like, okay. It was, you know, about this little child who was like apparently an English lord, but he like didn't know it. And this guy was like 10. And like, it was such a weird thing because he lived in poverty for most of his life. I'm going off on a tangent as a treat.
No, but I mean, it kind of sounds like it connects. I mean,
It
I'm not
does.
familiar with the story, but
It does connect. So it's like this child who didn't know that he was an English lord because some shenanigans with his parents or something, like his dad, I don't know anything about that, but he was with his mom, and then like it's discovered that he is actually like a lord and like is actually inheriting all of this wealth. Actually, it's kind of a very similar plot now that I think about it. So this kid is invited into this elderly lord's house to live, but his mother is not allowed to live with him, which is sad because she's technically not like a part of like the lordship or whatever. And he's just like trying to vibe with this old man, but then some other people like come in like claiming that they are actually like the lord, like the heir, and not him. And they try to steal his wealth. So it's like I just realized that the plot's actually really similar. It's just about rich families and then like another one just trying to steal the other's wealth.
You know what also remind me of the bit about the mother is that's like another thing that like ties them together is both JoJo and Dio lost their mothers. This sort of fits into a greater theory I have about the series as a whole.
Yes, is it the literary theory TM?
The literary theory TM, because
yes, when this man here, Tom of Ass, which just like appeared one day while we were eating food in the land of college, a magical place indeed, that was terribly stripped away from us, and said, "Hey, I have a literary theory about JoJo's Bizarre Adventures." And I was like, "Do tell."
And you were
do
like,
tell yet again.
We're going to be friends forever.
Yes.
Yeah, so something you'll probably want to keep into your mind, viewers, is that I sort of feel like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as a whole, like even though we did talk about how, you know, Araki doesn't really do a great job with female characters in terms of writing them, I actually think the series as a whole is about toxic masculinity and men sort of needing to embrace a more feminine side to them.
We should make a whole video about this theory, like when we're done with it, but you can please continue elaborating on the theory. I just think that we could actually make like a whole episode about it.
Maybe once, I think it's probably a safe bet that Stone Ocean will be adapted. So maybe after that, because I feel like that's where it sort of extends to. But anyway, I think as far as this it applies to Phantom Blood is that JoJo and Dio are sort of this almost like masculine stereotype in that like JoJo is like the brave, stalwart knight. You know, he's not a particularly complex character, I would say. But he does the right things, and he's also like ripped as fuck. And Dio is.
It's hilarious to see in the span of like the first episode to the second episode, they look like normally proportioned human beings, and then suddenly they're just massive.
They look like they eat steel bars for breakfast.
Yes, and it's just like, what? Did you just eat an entire cow? Like,
it really is like that. And Dio is sort of much the same, where he is. I mean, he sort of fits again into a standard archetype of, I guess he's kind of like the evil wizard, even though he's not really a wizard per se, but know, very clear-cut good and evil. And as we're gonna go along the series, I think that sort of basis of good and evil, standard masculine heroics gets sort of deconstructed as we go along. But I'll save all the rest of the musings once we get to the respective parts.
Just say it, Bella. Say it. Vampire. Can I just...
I had like a moment there where I was like, wait, like, is she referencing Twilight? And then you actually like went...
Wait, were you
vampire? And I was like, oh my god. She actually
were you there for movie night when we hate watched Twilight? Yeah. Apparently I made North Dakota laugh so much that he threw up in his mouth.
Shout out to North Dakota if you're listening to this, buddy.
if you ever decide to watch JoJo. But yeah, I was literally just like spouting off things about it like every like minute or so, and apparently I made him like throw up due to laughing so much. And he only told me like a week after it happened, and I was like, okay, that's an interesting thing to know.
That's amazing.
Speaking of vampires, the vampires in this series are very strange to me because one, they have ice powers, which is weird. That's like a whole thing. Like
They
later
have
on,
goddamn crazy powers.
they can shoot like lasers from their eyes.
Lasers from their eyes.
The way that they drink blood is so like alarming because they just sort of stick their fingers in your skin and they just sort of like inhale it through their fingers.
It's
and
the
I'm
precursor to Starfinger from part 3.
One of my favorite JoJo memes I've ever seen was like Bernie Sanders just like angrily pointing at Joe Biden, and it just said like CNN topic Starfinger, and it just like had like and it just had like edited his fingers going through Joe Biden's face.
That is amazing. I'm
gonna post memes to our I Want to Fight Araki social media. So you should
we definitely
follow all of
do
those
that.
things. There's a Twitter, there's an Instagram. Go find them. I'm gonna post memes. It'll be great.
Yeah. So I guess talking about vampires, like, I don't know if this is like going to be like a thematic discussion or not, but like, why does JoJo's mom have the stone mask?
You know what? That's an interesting thing to point out.
Because based on what we learn in part 2 about where the stone
where
mask...
did you get that?
What?
Like, honey, where did you get that? Did she just go cave exploring one day and then find like this statue of a man surrounded by a bunch of masks and say, you know, I'll just take one of these as a treat?
Take one. Leave the rest for your some vampire hunters.
You know, the big like thing that happened that caused the whole series to happen. Everyone's like, it's the carriage accident. No, it was JoJo's mom who just was like, how about I just go cave exploring, and then just decided to rip a face off of a wall and keep it.
I think also we're talking about like how weird vampires are in this series. So
I'm just very curious to if the vampires in this series also can't like eat garlic. Because I'll tell you, the amount of garlic I've been eating for the past several days, I swear to God, my blood is about 10% garlic right now. Any vampire is like probably allergic to me.
They just like burst into flames instantly.
Yep.
But I think, so the episode 3 ends with the mansion burning on fire. And like Dio survives that, and like
just for fun.
Like vampires in myth are like supposed to be vulnerable to fire, but I think like Dio like still survives that. And I think it's sort of maybe something we'll discuss more once we get into Stardust Crusaders and what stands are. But I think with respect to Phantom Blood, it just shows like Dio survives all the stuff that he survives, not just because, I mean, he's a vampire and he's got superpowers and whatever, but also because he so much believes that he is doing like not the right thing, but like he believes that he will win like definitively. And there's sort of like, again, in Stardust Crusaders, a theme of like self-actualization, I think is the word, where like you believe in yourself and like that sort of reflects in your ability to do things. And
it's just a goddamn Slytherin.
He really
is. He's just too ambitious and determined for his own good.
Yeah. We never see him in green though, except for like a little bit in
Stardust Crusaders. There's a bit of green happening there.
Green hearts all over his stuff.
Just for no particular reason. I'm gonna go ahead and make a weird, not a weird comparison, but like I remember when I was watching this through again, and I got to like the second episode. This is like another really interesting scene that I wanted to like go on a several minute rant about. Was that scene where it was like, well, Jonathan's going to Ogre Street. And Dio's like, oh, I guess I won't have to kill him now because he'll get killed. But little did he know, some thug fell in love with him and decided to not kill him. Anyways, So he's just like wandering the streets, and we get like another like weird little moment of vulnerability that makes me once again very angry, because he could have been elaborated into a very interesting villain, but he only ever gets that elaboration in like the first, like there's only like hints to how it could have been, which is why I want to literally just beat the hell out of Araki, I swear to God. So we get this like little moment where he's like, he decides to get hammered as a treat, and he's just wandering around with a top hat, as one does, and just gets angry at himself, like says something along the lines of like, I'm just like a drunk old fool like my bastard father was. And I was like, okay, sir, yes, you are. And that one, once again, could have been elaborated, and it could have made him very interesting, but then he was just like, no. But anyways, this scene right afterwards where he like encounters like two old men, like two homeless old men. It's just like, I saw it and then I was like, wait a minute, this looks exactly like one of the opening scenes to Clockwork Orange. Like Dio is like literally just Alex for several reasons. One being that like
they're bastards.
One, they're just both absolute bastards, and two, they're both like just lying, manipulative, like little shits, and who just like literally just like the two of them lie a lot. And also there's like a thing that's like another, okay, I'm gonna go off on several tangents here. So something that Speedwagon says in like the third episode is when like Dio once again tries to pretend that he's innocent, like, let me turn myself in, I'm good, I've been, and then he goes on this whole rant. He's like, I'm like a victim of circumstance. It was all of this, like, my alcoholic father beat me, and then he, like, killed my mom. And then, so now I'm angry at the world, and I want to kill everybody. And then, like, he was like, you find out that he was actually, like, not lying about it, but more lying about his intentions. Because if you think about it, it's like all of what he said was true. But like at the same time, but then Speedwagon says afterward, he was like, he's not a victim of circumstance. He was born pure evil, which is another thing that is said about Alex in Clockwork Orange, is that he's just simply pure evil.
And I think it's, so two things about that. One, I think it's particularly telling that Speedwagon calls him pure evil because Speedwagon has, I mean, not the specific circumstances, but, very similar circumstances to Dio. So this show is sort of saying that there is no such thing as victims of circumstance. And we'll probably see that again when we get to Golden Wind.
Yeah, that is... I'm trying so hard to not go on a giant rant about Giorno right now. I'm trying so hard to resist it because I have like a whole thing written already on like what I want to say about Giorno, and like when in contrast to Dio. And it's just like, and what you said about like Speedwagon and victim of circumstance, I didn't even notice that before. I was like, yes, that is correct. Because based on what we see about Giorno later, it's like, yes, they are all in the same bad situation, except only one of them ended up a terrible human being.
Yes. And I think particularly the note about him being pure evil and that comparison to Clockwork Orange, because, Clockwork Orange is sort of about moral ambiguity, more so with how the government functions. Because I think the movie at least is pretty obvious, pretty clear that Alex is the bad guy.
It's like the whole point of the movie is saying that, yes, this guy is terrible, but brainwashing him into being good is even worse than like him already being terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the thing. It's like forcing someone to be someone that they're not is even more cruel and inhumane than someone like letting, well, not the act itself, but just sort of like, it's like if someone's doing something bad, just put them in jail. Don't brainwash them, into trying to be good. And it's a good movie. And there's so many, like, I'm pretty sure there's so many things that like movies and shows that I've seen that I'm like, okay, Araki has definitely seen this. I think Araki, there's no way that Araki hasn't seen Clockwork Orange, because there's like so many like little things in it that remind me of it. Like that one scene that I mentioned before when like Dio was wandering around and like started beating up these, it's literally like even the shots in some point, like the camera angles and like just the general vibe of the scene is like almost exactly the same. And it's just like, wow, how about that?
And I think so. Just to bounce off that last Clockwork Orange point, I think what's interesting about JoJo as a series is that it does not step into moral ambiguity. It's
Oh, I wish it would, though.
yes, I wish it would too,
I
but
really wish it would.
I mean, we sort of
It like sets
Golden
it up.
Wind is probably the most. I mean, I would say moral ambiguity is a big theme of Golden Wind. Once we get to that, but
I have so much to say about Golden Wind.
I for at least the first four parts of JoJo, you are either a good guy or a bad guy,
Or you're Rohan.
or you're Rohan. Yes, but even Rohan, I mean, we'll save that for Diamond is Unbreakable. But I and how that sort of conflates with this trope of all the Joe Bros are basically people that the respective JoJo beats up and then they team up. It's like it's almost like what it's saying is like bad people like need to be shown. Bad people are either good people who need to meet another good person, or they are beyond redemption in the case of Speedwagon and Dio, respectively. It's this very simple view of morality that I think intentionally doesn't always gel with the supporting cast of all the JoJo parts. I just think it's interesting. Something we might talk about next episode with the other major Joe Bro that's introduced.
We're going to talk about it. Anyways, I really, really hope and wish that one day you will watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I'm about to bring up Zuko here, and I'm pretty...
Go for it.
It's just like, when it comes... I'm not going to, draw long on this because you haven't seen it because you're uncultured and not yet a valid human being, but one day you will be.
I've watched JoJo, so like I'm halfway there.
Yeah. So it's just I just love moral ambiguity in any series, and one thing that makes me want to beat the hell out of Araki. It's okay, Araki, I love you. I just want to kill you sometimes.
We just want to fight you a little bit.
I just want to like have like a nice little like one-on-one. I'll punch you in the face once, and then while screaming, and then you can punch me too. I'm fine with that. Anyways, where was I going with that? Oh yeah.
Sorry, I got lost in imagining me fighting Araki.
I got lost in the sauce right there. I get lost in the sauce a lot. So it's just like, it happens like with all the Joe Bros being like the villain, and it just like happens right in the beginning where it's like, yes, they're like a minor villain and they get punched in the face or kicked in the face or like, punched in the face by an actual fist or maybe by a Stan's fist, or like who knows, or you just like lick their face and we call it a day. It's just
Golden
that.
Wind's gonna be so much fun.
And it's Golden Wind is gonna be wild. I'm just gonna be screaming the whole time. Anyways, so we have like, it all happens in like the very beginning. It's just like a bunch of like, there's not a whole lot of build up to it, which makes me kind of sad. Yeah, there's no, like, even especially with Speedwagon, it's like, yes, I'm kicking you in the face and now I'm gonna follow you home like a lost puppy. And then you got like Avatar: The Last Airbender, you got probably the most well-written villain turned good I've ever seen in my entire life, where it's just like he becomes like a bro of like the main squad, except it actually elaborates on like how long that will actually take, that being like over 40 episodes of like stuff and like build up to this one thing. And it's just like, I at least like prefer if like the build up to those Joe Bros was like at least more elaborated on, like not like a whole 40 episodes, but at least like maybe another 2, or like just even 1 would be better. Just like a little bit of a focus on like why they're doing this.
Yeah, I will say I do feel like Speedwagon is the worst of it when it
Oh
comes
yeah,
to
yeah,
villains
he's a pure
turning
boy.
good. I mean, there's sort of an argument to be made that it doesn't even happen in Battle Tendency. And
I mean, in Battle Tendency, like Caesar was never really a villain. He was just sort of
he's just kind of
like
a
a
jerk.
friendly rival. It's just like Joseph just sees him and just like doesn't like his face. He's just like, I hate your face.
Yeah.
It's like, and I remember
Well,
in like
okay.
in
Maybe
like
I
the
guess
opening, it's like he just like watches the way that he behaves, and he was just like, eh. He just sort of like sneers at it.
von Stroheim would be the one to point to, but even then they don't really
Stroheim.
fight so much. But we'll save that for Battle Tendency. So,
My boy
um,
Stroheim, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
oh my god, I can't wait till von Stroheim.
I can't wait
Um,
until we have Giorno Giovanna herself to guest star and rant about part two.
yes. Is there any last minute points you want to make
You know what?
about these
Is
first three
there?
episodes of Phantom Blood?
Ooh, a funny thing. I have one funny thing to say, and that is I watched the entire thing over once, like a year ago in the sub, and then I watched it again, like not too long ago in the dub, and then I watched it over again, and I was like, how about I switch back to the sub? And then I realized on Netflix that I was watching like the Japanese version, but I had the subtitles for the dub, and
Oh, interesting.
it was a very interesting experience because in the dub, like I'm gonna rant about the dub for like 1 second. I actually the dub is kind of valid. It's like, but in like part one, they make it like so aggressively British. It's hilarious.
Yes.
And so it's just like the only reason like I noticed it is because like one, certain things didn't match up, and two, it was just like suddenly the dialogue that was written in front of me was so aggressively British, and I was like, oh, this must be the dub subtitles.
The only thing I'll add to the point about the dub is that the voice actor for Jonathan Joestar is this guy Johnny Young Bosch, who I absolutely love as a voice actor. He's great as Arakami from Persona, and great in a ton of stuff. The man cannot do a British accent, so it is kind of painful listening to the Phantom Blood uh, English dub, mostly because of the British accent that he's trying to do.
It's just there's so much happening with the British accents. It's like what's his name just like cannot hold on to the British accent. And
He
then like
really cannot.
Speedwagon is just like the most aggressively and at least he's consistently British, but he's very aggressively British, and I kind of appreciate that in the weirdest way because it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think
Um,
he's supposed to talk Cockney, I think it is.
and it actually does like I feel like there's like a decent job done there, at least to the point where at least it's kind of funny because like at least with Speedwagon, if you're gonna make him like kind of annoying, then at least make him funny. So there's that, and
Yeah.
then you got like Dub Dio, which triggers me on a level that I cannot describe because I don't know why. I feel like the voice actually does kind of fit, except for the fact that I had like a Vietnam flashback when I realized that the guy was also a character in Black Butler, and that's why it sounded familiar to me because I had seen it before, but I hadn't seen it in like 3 years. So it's just like my weird weeb past coming to bite me in the ass.
All right. And with that, I think we're ready to close the book on this first episode of I Want to Fight Araki. So,
Actually, one more thing. I just looked at my notes. It's very short. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
go for it.
So there's that one point where Dio says, "I am a god in all but name,"
Hmm.
and we all know that Dio literally means God in Italian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh, that's
It's
crazy.
literally it straight up means God, and I'm just like he literally just says, "I am a god in all but name," and I'm like, "Sir, you got that backwards.
That's
You are a
awesome.
god in name, but not in like reality."
So, yeah, if you want to follow the show on socials,
Please do.
to find out when the new episode's coming up, what episodes we're going to be talking about, you follow us at, I believe it's, well, you set up the socials.
I did.
Do you remember what the accounts are?
It's literally just there's an Instagram, there's a Twitter, and both of them are just I want to fight Araki straight up. That's it.
And
Shouldn't be any screwery with that.
if you want to follow me on Twitter, see all the dumb stuff that I post about, you can follow me at Thomas M. Brickman. And I also do another podcast called Post Game Content, where I do video game news and reviews with my buddy Kevin. You can follow us
Kevo.
On Twitter at PostGameCon. That's at PostGameCon.
You can hit me up. I am indeed present on Twitter. I rant about writing and stuff because I am actually having a passion for storytelling and writing, and I'm kind of an amateur, but I'm trying my best. It's at Emily Winkles. That's a V, not an F, because everyone thinks it's an F for some reason.
And with that, we will see you guys next time on I Want to Fight Araki, where we will be discussing episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Phantom Blood. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeet.